Hello, everybody, and welcome to Simply Reflecting. I'm your host, Dutch, and I am so glad to be joining you today, both via sound and film, if you will, because that's right, season 2 of Simply Reflecting, and we've added a video component. So if you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to it, you can also now go to YouTube and watch a video version of this podcast. At least I hope you will be able to. I have already recorded this podcast. I filmed it. I don't know what happened. I filmed my nose. It was 30 minutes of my nose talking. When I set the camera up, it looked different. I don't know. So anyway, hopefully this is filming my whole face at a minimum. And we'll go from there. So anyway, if you like to also watch podcasts, again, I'll have the link for YouTube in my in the description box, and then you can also subscribe over there. So with all that being said, I am so glad to be getting back to this. If it's your first time tuning into the podcast, it's my hope that this just feels like you're catching up with a friend, talking about all the things going on in your life. You are reflecting together, if you will, right? So with all that being said, let's get into this week's episode. I am so excited to get into this week's reflection. So this week, we are going to be reflecting on something that I think is very basic. Lots of people have talked about it, right? But it's a good reminder for me. I've needed it in my own life. And that is, behind every situation is a feeling. Everything in your life has a feeling behind it, right? And I really think when we get in touch with those feelings that are behind those situations, it can change everything for us. It can help us feel better. It can help us work through things. It can help us figure things out. It can just give us clarity, even if we don't do anything about it, right? And I really think this is so important. And it's something I forget. It's something I need to keep remembering, right? And listen, I am notorious. I have feelings, right? One time, my partner and I were in the car, and it was a very stressful day. We were moving. Well, I wasn't moving. He was moving. I was helping him move. And we had the car packed, we had a small car, and it was packed. Like, we had the slow cooker in between us on the seats, right? Like, and it had just been stressful. And then we lost something like in the trunk, and we had to get it out, and we couldn't find it. It was a whole ordeal, is what I'm trying to say, right? And we got in the car, and while it was happening, he had done something that I got mad about. I couldn't even tell you what it was. Could not even tell you. But we got in the car, we're both like, harumphy, whatever. And he says to me, he goes, do you have to have, because I start to say to him, I'm just really feeling, and he goes, oh my God, do you have to have feelings about everything? And it was so perfect, because I was like, yes, I do have to have feelings about everything. And, and we started laughing or whatever. But I think about that all the time. Like, do you have to have feelings about everything? And I do. And maybe it's the cancer in me. Maybe it's because I'm an only child and I spend a lot of time with my own thoughts, right? I'm just a sensitive person. I have feelings. But I think about that sometimes. Like, do you have to have feelings about everything? Yes, I do. And I think we all do about everything. And it's when we forget that we have feelings about the situations and experiences in our life that I think we run up against things, right? So let me give you an example, right? I had been thinking like, ooh, I don't like my content. I don't like what I'm putting out online. I don't like what I'm saying. I don't like what I'm doing, the whole thing, right? And I kept thinking like, oh, I just need to be funnier. I need to be quicker. I need to be use a different space. I need to film a different way. Like, I was coming up with all these different things that I could do to make my filming better, right? And then on Friday, as always, there's a catalyst. Catalyst? I think the word is catalyst. The thing that sets it off, right? High school chemistry was not my strong suit. The thing that sets it all off, right? On Friday, I happened to come across a post that was less than flattering about me. As it sometimes happens when you're on the internet, right? People critique you, totally. There's a difference between critique, though, and hate mail. And this was veering, especially in the comments, into some not so kind things. And a lot of it was about like my content, and just, it was unkind, right? And I don't need to explain. Anytime you read something or hear something not nice about yourself, for the most part, it doesn't feel very good, right? It just doesn't. Nobody enjoys that, or I don't think anybody really enjoys that. So anyway, it set me off. When I tell you I spiraled like those things that you used to drop the coin in, right? And it would go zoom, like around in circles, you know, those things from when we were little. Anyway, it was like that. I was spiraling like a coin in a spiral machine. Uh, and I was convincing myself of everything they were saying. I'm horrible. My content is cringe. I'm so embarrassing. I'm so this. I'm so that. All this, right? And then I was like, hold up. Why? What's going on? Because usually I can like disconnect from the critique, or I can view it with a little bit more of a wider lens, right? I'm like, what's going on? Why am I feeling this way? And then I was like, oh, okay, this is reinforcing for you a lot of the feelings, thoughts you've been having about your own content, about it not being good, about it being this, about it being that. And then I started thinking more about like, what have you been feeling about your content, or what have you been feeling going on? And what came up for me, the SparkNotes version, is, you know, when you post funny-ish content, right? And you don't necessarily feel funny in your everyday life, you can feel a disconnect. And that's what I'd really been feeling. It wasn't that my content was bad, or maybe sometimes, we all put out, nobody puts out good content all the time, right? Like you flop, everybody flops, right? We all have moments like that. Can you tell that I'm like actively trying to convince myself of that as I say that to you? So, but I am. I have to remind myself of it all the time, right? We all have moments. So anyway, but for the most part, my content was not like that different from what I've been doing, and it wasn't all bad, and it wasn't all the things I was telling myself, but it was different from how I'd been feeling in my everyday life. And that's where the disconnect came in. That's what I was going on, right? So then I had to be like, stick with me. I know I'm kind of like going all over the place here. So then I had to be like, oh, okay, you've been feeling disconnected from your content, right? Why have you been feeling disconnected? Oh, it's a feeling. I've been feeling sad, and your content is not really sad. It's not indicative, it's not reflective of how you've been feeling in your everyday life. So you've been feeling disconnected from it, and this has been going on. I hope that makes sense. To sum it up, right? I had not been liking my content. I had been coming up with all these different ways to make my content better, right? Film differently, think quicker, be smarter, be funnier, da-da-da-da-da. But nowhere along the way had I thought about what I was feeling amongst all of this. And what I was feeling was sad because of things going on in the world, things going on in my own life, things just, right? We could get into that another time. But, you know, I'd been feeling sad, and the content I was putting out was not reflective of how I was feeling, so I was feeling disconnected, but it all came back to a feeling, is what I'm saying. And me realizing, oh my God, you've been feeling sad. That's what's been going on. Me understanding a feeling helped me realize why I felt disconnected from my content. It wasn't that my content was bad, it was that it felt different from how I was feeling in my real life, and I wasn't addressing how I was feeling in my real life. You know, and quite frankly, I don't need to post, or I don't want to post sad content necessarily, right? Like, nobody needs to see me laying in my bed watching Fellow Travelers and Olivia and Fitz couple edits on YouTube crying. Like, that's just not, it's not what I want to share personally. So all of that to say, getting in touch with that feeling helped me understand what was going on with the content, right? Another way that, you know, we could explain it is if you have like a cabinet, and we could explain it. I'm acting like this is a hypothetical. This is really my life. I have a cabinet that I can't keep organized. Can't keep organized. This cabinet and me beefing, okay? I have bins. I've labeled the bins. I have shelf liners. I have organizational ideas. I got all this stuff lined up for this cabinet. Can't keep it clean and organized for my life, okay? But I've never stopped to say to myself, what's going on? What's going on with you in the cabinet? Right? And I know this sounds ridiculous. You're like, are you for real? Are you so for real? You're trying to examine the feelings you have around a relationship you have with a cabinet? Get so for real, please. But if I think about the cabinet and why I can't organize it, it's like, oh, I just feel so overwhelmed by this cabinet. And for me, it represents that I can't, you know, have control over my life, and I can't control things. And it just really makes me feel, you know, worthless and all these things. I mean, I could go on and on. I have feelings about everything, babe. I have feelings about everything. But if I didn't get in touch, if you don't get in touch with what you're feeling about a situation, you'll never be able to solve it, I think, is what I'm trying to say, right? If we just are always coming up with solutions without thinking about we're feeling and what's going on. The solutions never really stick, right? Another example, because, got to give lots of examples. If you have a student, right, like, I teach. So if I have a student that never pays attention during third period, I'm going to be like, why aren't they listening during this class? Like, what's going on? And I know that this class is math. So I come up with 10 different ways to help them understand math. None of them work. They're not listening for anything. But if I go to that student and I say, what's going on? I noticed that during this class, we have some trouble listening. Is there a reason why? And they say to me, I don't like math. Oh, you don't like math. Okay, why don't you like math? Because math is stupid. Oh, math is stupid. What about math is stupid? I just don't like it. It's hard. Oh, math is hard. Which, like, I feel you, babe. Math is hard. Okay, so math being hard, how does that make you feel when math is hard? I feel stupid. I feel like I can't do it. Oh, so you feel overwhelmed. So now I know that to help the student listen more, I need to help that student feel, like they can do it, feel more supported, feel more whatever. And so the list of things that I come up with to help them is going to be different than if I just came up with a list of things that I thought, make students listen more, right? Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. So this week, I just want to reflect on that. I want to reflect on the idea that there is always a feeling behind the situation, and it really, I think, makes a difference. If you're stuck in something and you're just trying to come up, you're trying to claw your way, you're trying to fight through and figure out what's going on. If you stop and you really ask yourself and allow yourself to take a moment to think about what you're feeling, have feelings about everything, it really helps. I do think it helps. I do. So anyway, I hope that helps you. Again, really not revolutionary, but sometimes the most simple things are the most revolutionary, right? Cliches are cliche for a reason. They help us do things. So this week, I hope if you're bumping up against something, you will, find yourself feeling whatever it is that you're feeling. And another example, right? And I do feel like I need to address this because, talk about trust issues. I came back in October talking about, I'm back, baby. We're ready to go. And then I bounced for 3 months. Situationship, anybody? Trust issues? And the reason why was because I was feeling a lot of unresolved feelings, sadness and grief and things like that. In the last episode, I talked about losing one of my roommates from college. My freshman year roommate passed very unexpectedly. And I've experienced a lot of loss. I haven't talked about this a lot on TikTok or anywhere really. I've briefly mentioned it sometimes, but I've experienced a lot of loss of a lot of people my age and other ages, but a lot my age in the past, few years. Since being a young adult, I've lost a lot of young adults, and I think that experience set off a reminder of a lot of things. So it was all I could do to keep my head above water, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And I think I was literally doing what I'm reflecting on in this episode. I thought, okay, I just need to do the podcast. I just need to push through and I need to just keep going and et cetera, et cetera. When really I was not in touch with the feelings, babe. So anyway, if you find yourself stuck in something, ask yourself, what is the feeling behind this situation? And now it is time for one of my favorite sections of the podcast, the advice column, where you can send in questions for advice. I'll try to answer them. My guarantee, I don't always give the best advice, but I will try my best. And sometimes I think the worst advice is the best advice, because then you know what not to do. So anyway, this week's question comes from Rosetta. Of course, names have been changed for confidentiality, right? And I'm looking over here to read it. So she wrote, Dear Dutch, I need some advice, and I'm hoping if the podcast comes back, you could help. We're back. I have been in a situationship with a man for a few months now, and I keep hoping it will become more serious. Do you think I should wait around, or should I move on? Rosetta. Oh my goodness. All right, well, first of all, I think this question has been asked as long as we've been alive, okay? You cannot tell me back in the cave age they were not in the midst of some situationships, talking about, should I stay with Johnny from 3 caves down, or should I start seeing Bob because he could offer me more in life? Like, the relationship that I want. I think people have been asking this question forever. And I know I've asked myself this question before in previous, situationships I've been in or things like that. And I think, first of all, and I don't know, but the first thing I would say is, I would ask Rosetta, I'm saying to you, Rosetta, right? Did you express this to the person, right? Did you say, listen, I want more? And did they come back with, I don't want more? If so, pack the bags, pack the metaphorical bags, because I'm assuming you're not living together, and, get out, move on, find somebody who can provide you with what you need, right? Because you will. If you haven't communicated it to them yet, talk to them, express what you want, because maybe they want the same thing or maybe they won't. But either way, it'll be good because you'll know where you stand with the person, right? And you can keep it going. Now, I know this is much easier said than done, because let's say you have expressed it or you've kind of expressed it, they send mixed signals, or maybe, like I have had once before, you have a false hope, a belief that things will change. Well, maybe if I just stay with them for a little bit longer, they'll, change their mind. And I can tell you, somebody who stayed on a little bit longer for a whole year with somebody who was just not, it was not compatible, right? I was wanting something that he wasn't willing to give, right? And I stayed on and stayed on and stayed on and kept convincing myself, because I was scared of what could happen if I left, that I would be just alone, I don't know, or, any number of things. And I finally cut it off, right? I severed it. And a month later, I met the person who I have now been with for a very long time. And I'm not saying, I make no guarantees. I am not Cleo, the psychic. So I don't know, I am not Miss Cleo. So I cannot guarantee that will happen if you leave this situationship, but it will open you up for other things. So I hope that helped. Being in situationships can suck sometimes. Number one thing, like always, communicate what you want. If they don't want it, get on out. If they do, fabulous. Maybe you move forward into something new, right? So anyway, I hope that helped. If you have any questions, as always, there's a phone number below. You can send in your questions, comments. Also, I just love hearing from all of you. So if you have something that you want to hear about on the show, something like that, my neighbor is just turned on their shower. I don't know if you can hear that. But let me know, okay? I would love to hear from you. And with that, this week's episode of Simply Reflecting comes to a close. Thank you so much for joining me for the first episode of Season 2, Episode 1, the first filmed episode ever of Simply Reflecting. Hello, here we are. We are still working on the lighting, the setup. It will probably continue to evolve and change, and you might see a few different settings and backgrounds in future videos, but we're figuring it out. I hope that this got more than just my nose. As you know, I filmed this whole podcast already, and it was just my nose. So I'm hopeful that this has my whole face in the frame, and I hope you all enjoy it. And as always, I am so, so glad that you chose to stay, and I absolutely, positively cannot wait until we are together again, simply reflecting.